Gallaudet University was founded back in 1869 by a man named Thomas Hopkins Gallaudet. Thomas Gallaudet was neighbors to a man named Dr. Coswell, who had a deaf daughter named Alice. Her being deaf brought interest to Gallaudet. He eventually taught her how to read and write a few words, and Dr. Coswell was so impressed he saved up money to send him to Europe to learn how to communicate and teach the deaf. Eventually he was able to open Gallaudet University, the first and so far only deaf school in America, and is founded in Washington, D.C. 119 years later, on March of 1988, there was an election for the new president of Gallaudet University. 3 were hearing candidates, 6 were deaf. It eventually came down to a hearing person and 2 deaf. All the kids wanted a deaf president, especially because it'd be the school's first. They even had parties to celebrate, saying this year they were most likely to get a deaf president. Shockingly, a lady named Elizabeth Zinsser won the election, and due to her not being deaf, the kids and faculty were upset. They all protested by not allowing the school to open. They'd stand out with posters saying "honk for the president," or do things like drive a bus in front of gates and slash the tires so nobody can get in. For what felt like the first time in history, the deaf were being heard. They made it on the news, made it in papers, and got exactly what they wanted. Student leader Greg Hilbuck even made it into the news as Person of the Week. Zinsser eventually stepped down from office after less than a week and hadn't even walked on campus during her presidency. She was never fully forgotten in the deaf community, though due to a comment she supposedly made, in which she denies, of her saying, "The deaf are not ready yet for a hearing world." Another thing to remember about the deaf community is they don't look at themselves as having a disability. They are extremely proud to be deaf and wouldn't have it any other way. They look down upon those who try and correct their kids by trying to mainstream them, meaning forcing them to eventually read lips and try and talk in public high schools, and use co-healers to help become part of the hearing community.
This evening, our Person of the Week. It is not very often we can say with much accuracy that a week has been a watershed, but this one has. This week, millions of us have had the chance to sit forward in our chairs and watch a group of young people as they break down some very out-of-date stereotypes.
Deaf people are capable of anything except that they can't hear.
Greg Leibach is president of the student government at Gallaudet University. He has been instrumental in bringing down a university president who is neither deaf nor able to speak sign language. He has also helped to raise the national consciousness about deaf people.
It's become a nationwide issue and a nationwide focus, and not only for deaf people, but for other people.
It sends a message to America and people who have a tendency to suppress others. It's time to change. It's time to accept people, as human beings.
This test of wills between a university administration and hearing impaired students exploded with unusual intensity on the Gallaudet campus.
This anger is really impatience.
Within hours, really, what had begun as a demonstration to get rid of a university official became something of a national catharsis for the deaf.
There's no such compromise. We have to do it our way.
It was astonishing. Kids who managed to shut down a university openly applauded by their elders.
In education, we often say that the best teacher is a good learner. Gallaudet University has been learning a great deal from its students. They have become our teachers.
It seemed as if there'd never been such an opportunity to tell the world that deaf does not mean defeated. There was one moment this week which said it all for many people. The chairman of the Board of Trustees, Jane Spillman, who had appointed the new president, was trying to speak to a crowd of students.
We will not sit here if you are going to scream so loudly that we cannot hear you and that we cannot establish a dialogue.
But the students shouted and signed back there was no noise for them. Had the chairman been deaf or even speaking in sign language, she would have been able to communicate. As for Elizabeth Zinser, who will not be president now, perhaps she had no idea she was walking into such a maelstrom.
Dr. Zinser is a victim because she's been in this situation and because she didn't know anything about what she was getting into. She doesn't know anything about deafness.
Greg Leibach has always been deaf. He comes from a deaf family. Mother and father, 2 brothers and a sister, all deaf.
Okay.
He's studying electrical engineering. The university which has given Greg this chance was first empowered to give college degrees by President Lincoln. It is the only liberal arts institution of its kind in the world, a mecca of opportunity and excellence.
Ever since I was a child, I've always dreamed of coming to Gallaudet, and it's always been there as a pillar for me.
And true or not, it is certainly part of legend that the huddle in football was created by the Gallaudet Bisons, so the other team couldn't see the quarterback as he signed the play he wanted.
What the hell did I tell you, Robert? Both hands on the ball!
At Gallaudet, the faculty is required to sign as well as speak. All over the country this week, deaf people have looked on with pride. For many years, the deaf have been a rather passive minority. This week, they've been a rather demanding one.
We want to have hearing people respect us and see us as peers. That's our real desire. We want to be seen as normal people.
And so we choose Greg Leibach to represent so many other deaf people. We would hope that this week represents more than a victory for just the hearing impaired. Perhaps by disturbing the peace for a few days, these very determined young people have had a lasting effect on the rest of us. With luck, the rest of us are a little more humane. That's our report on World News Tonight. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on Monday. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.